Welcome to Fontribute. We talk about fonts and their attributes. Fontribute. So, welcome again, guys. Hope you all had a great week. This is Thomas Jockin. I wanted to thank you all for being here. And today we have a fun project to talk about. So, let's get started. So, say you have a client project where you need a bold, condensed sans serif. So this is a pretty narrow scope, but I wanted to go over this week to two projects that took this approach and expressed it in different ways. And I think it'd be a great context to talk about some of the more nuances discussed in how you approach a sans serif project in your assignment. So let's get started. I have two. There's one called October and Gabriello. Let's go over some of the particular notes in this uppercase H. One is looking at the terminals. We can see that in October, the terminals seem to be a perfect oval kind of shape. Imagine it was like a circle that kind of just went through the line, a skeleton form of an H, and left these kind of rounded terminals at the end, perfectly circular, mathematical. But also notice that in how it's treated here, this is italic type. It seems to be more kind of an engineered mathematical skew as opposed to kind of compensated for being angled. Along that way, we can see that its slant is a traditional slant left and right. Compared to Gabriello, we see that the terminals are this mix of like more of a rounded square than a perfect circle. There's the radius of the curve is more rapid on one side than the other. So this gives it a certain way less kind of, it's more of a, I can imagine it's more of a rectangle stroke at the end, but just rounded at the corners more. Also, we see that its nature is varied based on the stroke on all four corners of this letter H. They're not exactly the same. Also, we can see in Gabriello, there's two levels of skewing happening. There's a traditional left-right skew, give it an italic angle. And then there's the up-down skew. We can see that in the crossbar, for example, in this H. So this results in a couple things. One is the left-right skew is way more aggressive relative to in October than in Gabriella. So October has a more traditional slant. Maybe we'll say probably like 8%. I would say a number of skew on October. Gabriello is way less on its left-to-right skew. It's probably only like 2 degrees. It's a very small amount, but it's compensated for with this kind of top down, up down skewing as well, which gives it still this sense of italicizing. Moving on, we can see in the lowercase a couple other things. One is October has a 2-story A. This is why it'd be more, I think we can say that October is more a oblique per se. It takes the Roman forms, the upright forms of October, and they've been placed into a mathematical skew. So some of the forms have been maintained from a Roman to italic. While in Gabriello, it's a 1-story A. So this follows a more traditional italic form. The lowercase a is done in one stroke, basically, instead of being 2-story structure. We can also note, one thing I want you to notice is, and this spoke to some of the production requirements of Gabriello, is the side bearings, the left and right side bearings of this letter forms. October follows a more traditional italic strategy of having negative side bearings. So that means a letter goes beyond the leftmost or rightmost boundary of a letter defined in its construction. This allows you to put the letters next to each other and they look like the right rhythm. Gabriello looks like does not decide not to do that strategy and maintain a positive side bearing on all the letter forms. But you have to maintain the general rhythm of the composition of the italicizing. Moving on to the S. S. We can see in the spine that it's a much more squarish spine in October. So it's much more engineered. It's kind of like it's clearly if you're going down one stroke, then we have a horizontal spine, and then we got down the other way. So it gives a more squarish tone in the S. Meanwhile, in Gabriello, it's a more angled spine. You can imagine almost like a reverse Z happening here, where you have a horizontal stroke, diagonal stroke, horizontal stroke. We can almost see a more sign painting aesthetic in that decision, how that letter form is drawn. We can definitely see that in how the terminals are handled. Noticing in October, it's still that kind of perfect circle terminal, while in Gabriello, it's more this kind of flared, kind of flat, tailish kind of treatment in the terminal. That's speaks much more to sign painting than a mathematically engineered oval moving across space. Moving on to the G, again, they're both one-story Gs in this case, but the difference is October has one where the stem and the shoulder kind of dip down, so there's a stem that still exists that protrudes out into the letter form, while Gabriello is mimicking more what lowercase a was doing, which is the top part of the shoulder goes perfectly jointed to the stem. It doesn't have this dip down, leading into creating a shoulder effect in the lowercase g. And again, see, also notice how the terminal is handled in the lowercase g. Compare the two of them. Gabriello has that flared terminal, kind of more, again, a sign painting tone to it, while October has that engineered, perfect oval kind of treatment handle to it. Onto the E. Again, so this idea of the skewing differences strategies are clear in this letter form. So in October, there's a straight horizontal crossbar, while in Gabriello, it's that angled crossbar. And again, notice the terminals. So we can see here there's some consistency in how the terminals are being handled internally between Gabriello and October. And this is creating a different kind of vibe and feeling between the letter forms. So let's summarize what we're seeing here. Overall, these are condensed, bold, italic sans serifs. And both are actually very constructed and engineered. But yet, while this, again, we're getting really particular, they then splinter off into two different voices. October, it gives more, ironically, kind of a engineered, bubbly tone to it. Gabriello gives this quirky, casual sign painter aesthetic. Notice we're getting really particular, but yet there's some deviation between the two. So if you had a project where you were going for, you wanted more engineering feeling, but you didn't want to be too engineering, you need a little softness to it, something like October would make sense for you. And you need it in a condensed, bold weight at sans serif design. If you're going for you want a more quirky, casual tone to it, then Gabriello is like the more appropriate choice for you. So, real nuanced points, but I think this draws some nice differences in approach of typeface designers and how they think about typefaces. This is Thomas Jockin. This is Fontribute. Hope you learned a lot this week. I look forward to hearing back from you next week. Take care. Bye.